You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, bringing your fears to life. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This time we are watching Realm of Fear. It was written by Brannon Braga, directed by Cliff Bole, and it first aired 28th September 1992. James, what happens in this one?
The Enterprise investigates a missing ship, the USS Yosemite, which is stuck in a plasma streamer with the crew unaccounted for. With weird space rays making a shuttle trip or use of the transporter impossible, Barclay suggests tying the two transporter systems together so that they can get through. But the trouble is, that will make the process take double the time, and Reg has a fear of transporters this week. While in the beam, he sees some unconvincing special effects and starts to question his sanity. But when he starts glowing all blue, the crew work out that there are lifeforms in the plasma. Aren't there always? And that they've been caught in the transporter. Going back in and being terribly brave, Reg cuddles the giant transporter worm and beams back a missing crew member. And we all learn something about facing our fears.
Alex, you had never seen this episode before. What did you make of it?
I mean, well, as soon as I realised that it was a Barclay episode, I sort of expected a sort of light affair, quite jovial, a comedy episode. It really isn't that. I don't want to fall back on basically fine, but it is. It's fine. And I hate saying it, to be honest, because I realise that's the most boring analysis of anything ever. But there's very little to latch onto here. I mean, essentially, at its core, it's try and overcome your fears, kids. You know, it's like watching an episode of a kids' TV show. Like, this week, Thomas the Tank Engine needs to overcome a fear of the dark.
I think Barclay is interesting. Obviously, you've got Dwight Schultz. He is a good comic presence. And if you've got him, you want to use him. It's not just Whoopi Goldberg was available this week, let's slot her into it, or that you can just have Ensign Ro doing her job in one episode. If you've got Dwight Schultz, you're building the episode around him. And I think probably at a certain point, you have him as the big guest star in Hollow Pursuits, you do the big hologram thing, then you have him becoming a super genius, and it sort of becomes, what do you do next? What do you do next? Oh, we've got to give him another defining character trait. And in this case, it's, what if you were scared of the transporter? And that kind of makes sense, because you couldn't really do that with any of the main crew members. They're all far too competent, and we've seen them go through the transporter all of the time. That as a story for this character, as a vehicle for this character, it's fine, but it's definitely the weakest of the Barclay appearances we've seen so far. It might just seem like you can only do so much before it becomes a little bit, oh, Barclay's got something else going on with him psychologically and he's going to have to overcome that. Okay.
It doesn't help as well that it suffers from that early TNG problem of it's a mystery, except it's not a mystery because we already know that, you know, there is something in the transporter, and then we're just waiting for him to pluck up enough courage to tell people, and then we're waiting for them to investigate it. So we're ahead of the episode. And I mean, okay, the mystery is, but what is it that's in there? But I would argue that mystery isn't quite interesting enough to stretch to 45 minutes.
I'm still confused about what was in the transporter, because that was a worm. That wasn't a person. That was like a crusty sock.
You know what it looked like to me? If you've ever seen any of these strange mothers, especially in the States, that on having their infant son circumcised, decide to keep the foreskin in a jar. Maybe this is less common than I think it is, but when I've seen it, the little circumcised chap floating in the jar reminded me of that. Very much of that.
Well, I think we can I'll take something away from that.
That's exactly what the doctor said.
What was the worm? What was the worm? Was there a manifestation of his fear?
No, I think this is a perfectly valid question because I watched this as a young child. It can't have been that far off, like when it first aired in the UK, and I didn't understand it then. And I thought, well, I'm rewatching it now. I must have I've seen it multiple times now. It all makes sense. It'll all come together. So at first they say, oh, it's the microbes, and then the transporter scale has no meaning, so it could be the microbes, but it's not the microbes because it's the people, and they are big, and I don't understand what they are. Are the people merged with the microbes, so they've become a big sort of, I don't know, bacteria in the transporter? I don't think they're anything. I don't think it makes any sense. And again, I don't want to pick at the science because this is the first time we see inside the transporter. And they literally say, you're broken it down into a million molecules. But then, once you're in it, you seem to be fully coherent, but just in the transporter. And you can grab and cuddle a big space worm. Now, what's happening there? Is that just what he thinks he sees? I don't know what's happening. And no, I don't. Why are the people, why do they look like a very bad visual effect? It just, none of that. The mystery element, the resolution, where you go, it's people, grab them. And I was like, okay. And even that scene at the end where he goes, the people are trapped in there, you've got to hold on to them and then come back. And it's like, he doesn't mention, hold on to the weird worm thing.
Wouldn't it have been great if when the people rematerialize, one of them just had their hand puppet?
Yeah. They were just in the big green morph suit.
I mean, I assume that the reason, without looking at the script, I probably could go and find a script, but I really can't be asked. I assume that the reason is that the script has something like Reg sees some undefinable shape approaching him within the transporter, and then the effects crew has looked at that script and gone, what the bloody hell's that supposed to be? Crusty worm sock? Yeah, that'll do. And I assume that's how you end up in that position. Whereas it's, logically, if it was like some sort of amorphous energy shape approaching, that would make more sense. So I assume it's just a confusion in translation somewhere along the line.
I hope they didn't use the term crusty worm sock in the script, because that could have got terribly confusing and embarrassing.
That's next week.
It does put things into perspective when you watch a really, truly awful episode after watching a perfectly serviceable episode.
Yeah, I think that has sort of coloured my view watching the next episode alongside this one, as we have done for this recording, because it does make it very hard to be particularly harsh on this episode, where its worst crime is just that it's unmemorable.
It is very middling. I guess you have the actual plot. What are the crew dealing with this week? Which is the USS Yosemite, which is stuck in some plasma between two stars, and basically they're trying to work out what happened to the crew. Most of them are dead, 4 of them are missing. There's a jar that is broken apart, and even all of that feels so perfunctory. What was in the jar? Was it the space plasma? Did it explode? Yes. Did that have some impact on the transporter? Yes. Oh, it turns out they're alive, like it has done since Devil in the Dark in the original series. Oh, there's some life forms we couldn't possibly have anticipated. That bit isn't that exciting either.
I mean, jumping around a little bit, but a question. Is this episode deliberately set up to foreshadow things for the future? Because they do spend time talking about the safety of the transporter at ball-achingly tedious lengths, and they do make a point of there's never accidents with the transporter. Can you think of an accident with the transporter? Because I'm sat here thinking, well, I haven't even seen the episode, and I'm quite aware that there's an episode coming up about a transporter accident with Scotty.
That's not a transporter accident per se. I mean, it is a similar concept to what happens to the survivors here, but they are setting things up in this episode, but maybe that's a misdirection because they're actually setting up elements of Deep Space Nine.
Did that not stick out like a sore thumb, though? The Deep Space Nine setup. There's been Cardassian attacks in the area, and you think, oh, have there really? Is that going to come up again in this episode? No. Here's Chief O'Brien.
A lot of Chief O'Brien. The most Chief O'Brien we've had in quite some time.
You need to remind the audience about him. He's about to get his own spin-off. His spider does not get a spin-off.
45 minutes of time, and what did we learn at the end of it? That he has a pet tarantula.
The spider is very much like his playing the cello in terms of the impact that it has on his character.
Well, he's a Renaissance man. He has a lot of hobbies.
See O'Brien whenever he's talking to anybody. Oh, sir, excuse me. He seems so obsequious on the Enterprise in a way he never is on Deep Space Nine. I don't know if it's just the writing.
Yeah, no, that was something I was going to ask about. The fact that he's always referring to Barclay as Sir. I just assumed in my head that they were sort of equivalent rank.
That is actually a contentious point with this episode because they, I believe, changed O'Brien's rank for this episode so that he would refer to Barclay as Sir.
So, in Deep Space Nine, O'Brien is a chief. So he is a non-commissioned member of Starfleet. He is not an officer. So he is actually like a chief petty officer. It's not just that he was transporter chief. Whereas in all past Star Trek, when we have seen him, he has had officer's pips. He has been either an ensign or a lieutenant junior grade. And that's kind of a canonical inconsistency. Some people have argued, he left being an officer to go down a rank in order to do whatever. And it's just like, Star Trek's a bit weird because everybody seems to be an officer for the most part, which is not how any kind of military organization would function. But hey, you'd think they might have sorted it out given how deep into Deep Space Nine they were.
That's the type of thing that Enterprise would reconcile, not Deep Space Nine. Enterprise would have a whole 3-parter about it.
It seems really weird to me that it's like, Greg, we need you on this one. It was your idea to tie the transporter systems together. Well, actually, you want O'Brien for that job, don't you? That's your man, if you want to do the transporter stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't really work out. I mean, I get it's his idea, but if I were trying to work out who to take with me on a mission where the crew of another ship had disappeared, I probably wouldn't choose the nervous, sweaty man. It would suggest to me a lack of professionalism at a time when it might be required.
I know he says, he needs a systems engineer, so I think he just needs him to download the files, actually, when he gets there, so I don't know. Fine, I will fully accept that. Other elements in this episode is the standard, Barclay has a crisis, he goes and talks to Troy. Did you enjoy her character in this episode? She's a helpful counsellor.
It's functional, but there's a lot of... Her scenes, as much as anything else, there's a lot of just keeping the wheels turning. A lot of sort of, what do you think about this? Oh, I never thought about it. Oh, okay, why? Oh, okay, yeah, fine. Why is that? Oh, no reason. Oh, is something wrong? Well, maybe. Oh, okay, well, we'll go and look at that. I get that might be a real exchange, but it gets a bit grating after a while.
Is that pressure point thing that Troy tells Reg about a real thing, or is that just pseudoscience?
I assumed pseudoscience.
It feels very 80s, doesn't it?
It feels like the sort of bollocks that I'd tell my 7-year-old to get him to go to bed.
If you don't go to bed, the crusty sock worm will get you.
You can buy one at every convention. There's loads of replicas. It's the most popular Star Trek toy.
I don't want to be called in for a meeting in the school to discuss why my son says that I'm entering his bedroom with the crusty worm sock. that might be misconstrued.
I guess you see the harder side of Troy after we have the scene in engineering with Data noticing that Barclay's acting weird, because, it's nice to give Brent Spiner something to do every week. And then Troy relieves Barclay of his duty just in the corridor in a really sort of unprofessional way.
I think everybody else just thinks, oh, well, that's Barclay being Barclay.
Yeah, a man supremely unqualified for the serious job that he's doing.
And that's the whole thing with the episode. That's the whole point of any Barclay episode, is that you cannot imagine any one of our regular characters dealing with a fundamental fear, because they're all quite dull and they're all very competent. So to have this, and I would say, to use the word, to have something relatable, and Brandon Braga said, this is about me, I'm scared of flying. It's the safest way to travel, but I'm scared of it. That's a way to explore a common fear using the framework of Star Trek.
I think I just hope for more from an episode. As I say, because otherwise it is a kids' TV show with the message this week is eat your vegetables. Be kind to your elders.
Face your fears.
There isn't even really a B plot to make this not drag, is there?
I mean, the B plot is effectively what's going on the Yosemite, or what happens.
Or is the B plot Chief O'Brien and his spiders?
I was going to say, I think the closest to a B plot probably is Chief O'Brien's plot. Ultimately, anything that you could describe as vaguely a B plot is quite intrinsically linked to the A plot anyway. I think it's fine to do that and recontextualize something into this setting. I mean, Christ, that's what most of sci-fi is. I don't think it's enough, personally. Or at least not this far into the run. This is exactly what I would expect in season 1. Well, let's be generous, season 2. But I think we've surpassed this now, and the median is just that little bit higher now.
But actually, this is, I guess, your first episode proper of season 6. We have just had the second part of Time's Arrow, and it's kind of and then you've got this, and followed by Man of the People. You wouldn't say it's a strong run. And James, maybe you can input here. What we said for so long on this podcast, it gets better. Would you say it's peaked and we're now sort of sliding downhill a little bit?
Actually, weirdly, no, I wouldn't, because season 6 is my favourite. But I'm surprised that there's 2 episodes. And I feel harsh lumping Realm of Fear in with Man of the People, but yeah, two lesser episodes right next to each other in this era of Next Gen.
It's bizarrely sort of both elevated and dragged down by the company it keeps. It's elevated in comparison to what we get next week. Christ, is it? But equally, yeah, if you put it alongside Time's Arrow Part 2, it is just another fairly middling episode.
In many ways, we know that in the run of almost 200 episodes that we have got some very good ones, probably about 20 amazing episodes, 70 good ones, and quite a few weak ones. And this is, I genuinely think, basically fine as a decent description. I think it is elevated in that Dwight Schultz is in it, and he's quite interesting, but I don't think it's great overall. I think it is okay. It's a decent episode of Star Trek Next Generation. Not a lot to analyse in it. It's very singular, and it is very character focused. Whether you've got those conversation scenes with Barclay and Troy, or the conversation scenes with Barclay and O'Brien, of which you've got a couple. When we're saying that overcoming the fear, there is an element of Reg becoming slightly more competent when he starts to believe in himself, and he orders the senior staff to be woken up, which seems weird, like they all share a bedtime, which I'm sure on shift patterns is absolutely true. But is that enough? Has he gone through that arc already where he doesn't have his confidence to be who he wants to be, and then he does. And it's just kind of a replay. And because of the episodic nature, you know how it's going to turn out.
Is this the last? Oh no, there's one more Barclay episode, isn't there? Or one more episode he appears in.
No, he's in 2 more. Because he's in Ship in a Bottle, and he's in Genesis briefly.
Right, yeah.
So this is the last episode built around him.
Is that a good thing? There are opportunities with Barclay. I think that it's fair to say wasted potential.
Yeah, and he obviously comes back in Voyager in a fairly significant way. And I'm not sure that ever quite worked. It was very much the Next Generation rating stunts that took place on Voyager. Yeah, I don't think they ever will sort of fulfill his potential, but maybe it already had been. Maybe it is a single episode guest. And if you wanted to go in deeper and have him just as more of a recurring character who's there and interacts just to add texture to the ship, that might also have been fine. But would he have been a better character to have as a series regular? Just as we suggested, Ro might have been a better character to have as a series regular. Potentially. There's only so much you can do character episode-wise, I think, within the confines of this show.
To an extent, Barclay is supposed to represent members of the audience. And I don't mean that in a negative way, even though I know sometimes it can be, depending on the episode. And I don't think that really works too well in Star Trek, because they did it as well with Wesley Crusher. He was kind of supposed to be a bit of an audience surrogate, or at least a Gene Roddenberry surrogate.
Yeah, but in that context where the audience is a 14-year-old boy and thinks, I want to be on the bridge of the Enterprise, so that actual definition of the Mary Sue, I can do anything. I can banter with the captain of the Enterprise, and I can solve all the problems. And that's boring. And Barclay being sort of incompetent doesn't really feel like it fits particularly well.
Next, it's kind of saying to the audience, oh, this is what you'd be like. But, it's true, but...
I could certainly see a version of this episode where, all of the stuff with Barclay is retransposed onto, say, Wesley. It would be different, and the reactions of the rest of the crew to it would be different. But I think you largely could take the same story and have the vast majority of the beats still play out. And perhaps that's one of the more telling things for, is the character played out? Maybe?
I think you're right. And you could actually remove the transporter fear element of this, because that's just initial. Because if you've gone in and you've seen something and nobody believes you, and then you think you're going mad, you could play that out with pretty much any character in this. And maybe it seems even more unreasonable if it's Geordi who refuses to go into the transporter because he's chief engineer and he knows better. So yeah, I think you could.
Even though Geordi nearly died in the transporter a few episodes ago.
Just don't think about that too much. It's very safe. It's very safe.
It's got 4 safety features. Stop your criticism.
I mean, they're saying this to us as the audience. We've all seen Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and that's a disturbing image that will never ever leave me.
That scene, I really don't like that scene, particularly when they're all laughing at McCoy shortly after it.
It's like literally 5 minutes later. It's like, McCoy's scared of the transporter. What a fool. Those people just got turned inside out and into mush. McCoy with his fear of the transporter. Remember Pulaski with her fear of the transporter? Anyway, they save some of the people. Isn't that good?
Yeah.
And Barclay's the hero.
He's the hero, but then at the end we see he might have overcome his fear here, but where he's made out he's brave in other areas, he's more scared than he thinks. Oh, spiders. Yeah. Fine.
It was a menacing looking spider.
Don't get me wrong, I don't want it crawling up my arm. But then I also, probably, if I went to a bar to drink with my colleague and they just casually unboxed their tarantula I I think I probably would have had a reaction to that prior to that, and potentially an HR complaint.
I don't think you can just spring that on someone. I mean, is a pet-friendly pub? We just don't know.
You can't be going to 10 forwards with a spider. You need to go to 8 forwards.
I mean, I guess you don't need any special provisions. It's not like you're going to need a litter tray.
I mean, it is very much... It's the comedy Star Trek ending. Let's end on a laugh and a freeze frame.
Ba-da-da-da-da-dun. Hey.
And that's how we're ending this. Have we got anything else to say in quickfire? Let's play the jingle and find out.
Quickfire.
Loathed as I am to credit the Nitpicker's Guide and indeed Phil Farrand with a good point, there is one. I mean, it does just sort of replicate something we already said, but just for 1 degree further, which is so the crew members of the Yosemite got caught in the transporter and turned into worms. But when they came out again, they were people again. To corrupt a Picardian phrase from the episode Power Play, if the worms in the transporter are members of Starfleet, aren't they behaving rather badly? One did, after all, bite Barclay's arm. Yeah, why did it bite his arm?
Why did it bite his arm? These are great questions. It's like, were you just a worm? Were you a thoughtless worm? Or did you just like the look of Barclay's arm?
I mean, it's only taken him 363 pages, but finally we've hit a good one.
I didn't think that they'd been turned into worms. I thought that was kind of a manifestation of something, and that was just them grabbing out to him.
We'll never know.
Or care.
The shot of Barclay getting a glass of water from his replicator is a stock shot from the Vengeance Factor, as Riker's uniform can be seen reflected inside the replicator. However, I want to talk about that. I like that he says he doesn't care what temperature it is. I also wanted it to be a boiling hot glass of water that he pulls out of the replicator, because the replicator's stupid, and specifying a temperature for water seems a little bit weird, unless you want it, like, boiling, I guess. Maybe it is useful. I don't know.
How did they miss that gag? Because that's absolutely what I assumed was going to happen.
I guess it would just make everybody question the health and safety of the replicator.
Yeah, all the safety features on the replicator. You know, like if you replicate a pasty, is like the filling so hot that it would like burn your mouth? Or does it replicate at exactly the right temperature to eat?
Or like a McDonald's apple pie, which, you know, you expect it to be molten in the middle, so you can't eat it. Do people desire that?
Where does it fall on the tedious arguments of cream versus jam on a scone? Are members of the crew from Devon often feeling that they're persecuted?
Well, maybe you could order it Devon style, or was the default be wrong?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is what is the default? Have centuries of violent conflict resulted in the default being removed, and therefore a regional specification being required? All questions more interesting than a lot of this episode.
What is the hot that Picard specifies? Is it boiling? Is it 60 degrees? Is it hotter than the standard Earl Grey that is delivered?
A secondary question to that would be, why does that need a specification? Because when have you ever known anyone to request can I have a cup of Earl Grey? Yeah, sure. Oh, why did you give me this? I didn't want it hot. I wanted it cold.
You know, I actually did check Memory Beta for this episode, and I got so desperate to try to find something in expanded media that I was clicking on a link to Ice Cream Sundae. There's nothing. This episode is never spoken of again. I thought the worms would have came back, like a comic or something.
Speaking of the worms, they were designed by Dan Curry and built by model maker Carrie Howe. Curry, covered in a green suit, puppeteered the creatures, which is nice.
And credited his Tai Chi for the slow and graceful movements he had to bring to the task.
We've had sort of poor snakes quite recently in Time's Arrow as well. And that was a rubbish effect. And like, I love practical effects. I like puppets. But it's hard not to make it look like a puppet. It's, yeah. Barclay asks LaForge, Commander, has anything strange ever happened to you during transport? Anything out of the ordinary? LaForge answers, no, not really. Now, has he forgotten that he went out of phase with the universe and was invisible and could walk through walls quite recently? I appreciate it's episodic, but to me that seems like something I might remember. Or I might have said, well, at one point I was turned into an alien space creature and they had to use the transporter in order to fix my body. I don't know. Like, these things seem relevant. I guess you just want to dismiss the junior crew member. Maybe they didn't have access to that level of mission log.
Oh, actually, I've just remembered there is actually a transporter accident episode coming up. Not the Scotty episode.
The Riker episode.
There's two. There's
It's all foreshadowing.
yeah. There's Rascals as well.
I mean, I'd genuinely be interested to know if it is intentional foreshadowing or if it's just pure fluke.
It's fluke. Although it was supposed to be the Scotty episode next.
Right.
Just to say it, O'Brien's collar insignia changes from lieutenant to chief. One black pip here in this episode, just to reinforce the plot that Barclay can outrank him. There is an article, if you'd like to read it on Memory Alpha, called Miles O'Brien, Problematic Rank History. And I would strongly recommend you take an hour out of your day, probably your working day. You don't want to waste your own time on this, and have a read of that. Hey, that's another one down. I hope you'll join us once again when we will be back to talk about Man of the People, an episode I know we're all very much looking forward to. But until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Miles O'Brien problematic rank is definitely something you don't want to make a typo for when you're typing that into Google.